Take one wheeler dealer, combine that with an expert mechanic, and add one lucky punter who's ready to trade up their unwanted motor for the car of their dreams, and you've got yourself Wheeler Dealer's dream car.
I hope you can hear me. Welcome along. There we are. That little clip you saw just there was a clip from Wheeler Dealer's Dream Car. For those who didn't see it, a show that was on Discovery Channel. Well, what was it? Earlier this year, wasn't it? No, earlier last year. A show that I did together with Mike Brewer, who you'll have seen from the title of this video, is joining me today. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Mike Brewer. Hello,
Elvis.
Can you hear me?
I'm all right, mate. Yes, I can see you and hear you loud and clear. How are you?
Fantastic. Really, really good. Thank you. Loads of people tuning in already. Lots of people are fans of yours because you've been on TV for, I mean, goodness knows how many years now. You can tell us all about it in a second. But we've got loads of questions coming in that I'm going to start to filter through as we go. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I'll let you fire away with some answers, and I may well jump in if I see a relevant question that might slot in there. So I'll let you go, and then I'll pop in and out with something that somebody wants to know, because you can't see the questions as they come in, but I can. Right, so let's start this whole thing off, because loads of people have been in touch already this afternoon knowing that this was going to happen, by talking about how you first got into television, because I think loads of people have heard the story of how you got into cars. You know, it was something that you grew up around, your dad was into cars, but how did that turn from selling cars on a forecourt to end up being this guy that everybody knows as the Wheeler Dealer?
Well, I think it's more or less reluctant luck, if I was to be honest with you. I was doing very well. I was flying, in fact. I was working on a car site in South London, Wimbledon, with a friend of mine called Dave. And I was specialising in cars like Peugeot 205 GTIs, Golf GTIs, Peugeot 316s, yeah, anything with an eye on the back. Anything with an eye on the back you could sell, that was us. And we was doing really well. I was flying at the time, and I got a call from a young lady who, my friend Dave, who I was on the site with, he went to the toilet because he had a curry the night before, so he had a dicky tummy, and he disappeared to the toilet and left me answering the phones. And I answered the phone to a young lady called Celia, who asked me all these questions about a Golf GTI that we had in stock. So I gave her all the answers to the car, and she said, "You sound great on the phone. You don't happen to be Mike Brewer, do you?" I said, "Yes." "Why?" She said, "Well, I spoke to other car dealers in London, and they've all said that I should be talking to you. We're making a car show on Channel 4 called Deals on Wheels, and we're looking to put a car dealer in it, showing you how to buy and sell cars." And I immediately went, no, that's not me. I'm not showing you how I do my trade. I'm just not interested. And I said no for 6 months. They pestered me for 6 months to be a part of the show, and I just kept refusing. But what I did do in those 6 months is I'd become sort of an advisor to them. So they wanted to know whether they should buy a Maestro. No. Shall we buy a Mini? Yes. So I sort of advised them in those 6 months, but refused to be a part of it. And after 6 months, the show was made. In fact, Celia phoned me up and said, "We've made the show, it's done, it's cut. But now we put the show together, we're thinking that we should have a host in it. It should be presenter led. Would you like to come in and try it for a presenter's role?" And I said no again. And she said, "Please, I think it'd just be a bit of a laugh for you, just come in anyway." So I was selling a car in North London, and on my way back, I popped into this sort of car showroom fake studio that they'd set up, walked in. I met that day, very strange day for me, because when I walked in, there was a full film crew. There was Quinton Wilson, Mike Rutherford. There was some other motoring journalists that I knew, suits and ties, reading scripts, getting ready to talk about a Nissan Bluebird and an MG Midget. And I walked in a pair of jeans and a T-shirt thinking, I don't know what I'm doing here. I was at my depth. And then somehow, I don't know how, the bare knuckle fighter and then film star from, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Lenny McLean walked in because he knew a member of the crew, and he came in and gave me a hug. He gave everyone a hug, to be fair, but he gave me this huge, great big hug. You'll be all right, son. You'll be all right. Anyway, I watched everybody else do their little piece in front of a Nissan Bluebird. I remember Quinton Wilson very well, saying it handles like the Duchess of tea trolley, finest car built in Sunderland. I remember that very well. And then when they said to everybody go, everyone went, and they said, Mike, it's your turn. Tell us everything you need to know about Nissan Bluebird. And I basically just said, I didn't look at the script. I said, look, if I fall out of Tramps nightclub at 2:00 in the morning, the only car I want to see is one of these, because that's the perfect minicab to get me home. It's usually got an aerial, a magnetized aerial, and a carrier bag stuck to the boot lid. And I said, and these are minicab to death. So you want to make sure that it's got no stone chips on the front, pull the seatbelt out, make sure it retracts properly, look at the driver's seat where the bolster will be worn, look at the steering wheel where it's going to be shiny and what. And they went, stop, stop, stop. You got the job. And it was as simple as that. I got the job hosting Deals on Wheels, which when it aired in 1997, so some people weren't even born then, in 1997, when it aired, by week 3, it became the biggest show in Channel 4's history. So by week 4, I was being headhunted by Top Gear on the BBC.
Right. I mean, what an amazing story, because, you know, that happened back then, which was, like you say, way back 1997. I won't tell you how old I was back then. But since then, just look at how it's gone on, because the Wheeler Dealers franchise, I mean, when I first came to join you, and we'll maybe talk about that in a moment, but when I first got together, which was really recent in the history of Wheeler Dealers, I wasn't really aware of just how big the whole thing is globally. You must be blown away by how the whole thing has taken off.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we are, I can say this with confidence, we are the original, you know, Wheeler Dealers, or Deals on Wheels back then, is the original car show. It's the car show. The Top Gear was on the air, but it was reviewing new cars. This would be the very first time anyone in the world, not only in the UK, anywhere in the world, anyone had seen a car flipped on TV. And it was an element that I brought in to Deals on Wheels. I didn't want to show myself being a car dealer. But as I started to make Deals on Wheels, I realized that there were things of being a member of the public that you could do yourself at home, which is to buy a car down at Hills, change the hubcaps, smarten up the interior, polish it, clean the windows properly, take good photographs of it, and you too can make a profit. And little did I, Wheeler Dealers, and then Wheeler Dealers being the very first ever car restoration program, globally, anywhere in the world, that show would then go on to be the biggest hit on the network, that then spurned loads of copycat shows. And, you know, there's now whole networks dedicated to flipping cars, like Motor Trend and Quest Television and, you know, most of Discovery. Every network in the world's now got Netflix, have got a car flipping show, National Geographic with Car SOS, and they can all, quite rightly, trace their history back to that very first moment in Deals on Wheels, which I put in, and I'm very proud of that. Yeah, but you're right. I didn't realise back then. But I did realise it soon after that we were on to something really special. I just thought it was a bit of a laugh. I carried on being a car dealer for 3 years whilst doing Deals on Wheels. I still had the car site. And I carried on doing that for 3 years until I realised that this was something else. This was something special, and I knew that I could make something out of it.
Right. I mean, how many seasons are we up to now? Because is it 17?
18 now. We're me and Ant are part way through our 18th season, and then we went into lockdown.
Unbelievable. So that's amazing. There's loads of questions coming in about your favourite cars across the shows, and perhaps you can pick out one or two just very quickly, because some people have their own favourites, but have you got one or two of all of those 17 and a half seasons that stick in your mind?
Yeah, there's over 200, I think there's 250 cars now, but in the olden days with Ed, it was definitely Lamborghini Urraco. In the more recent times with Ant, it's Ant's favourite car is the Escort Cosworth. Also voted by the audience recently as the favourite ever Wheeler Dealers episode. That was Ant's first show. And then the second one, or my favourite recent car, has been the Austin Healey 3000. Amazing.
Yeah, very good. Can't really disagree with those. And then a lot of people, because I won't pick out any particular question because so many people have asked this, but what is your dream car? Now, I already know the answer to this, and I also happen to know this because I was with you when you bought it. So tell everybody what your dream car is.
You were, Mark. So listen, I keep getting asked this question, and I've been asked it over the last 22 years. People go, what's your favorite car? What's your dream car? And everybody expects me or you, people in the public eye, people of media, they expect us to say, well, Ferrari 250 GTO short wheelbase, because it's the world's most expensive car. They expect us to give that answer. But my answer's always been the same. And it's been my answer all my life. And it's a 1964 Mini Cooper S. 64 for a reason. That's the year that Paddy Hopkirk won the Monte Carlo rally, and he won it in a Mini Cooper S. I just think it's the sweetest, most engaging car in the world, and I would rather have that car to drive at 10 temps than a Ferrari 250 GTO that I'd be scared to pull out my driveway. So I've been looking for one for years, and I put myself into a position where I can afford to buy one, and the prices have gone up a lot recently. And I've been looking for one for years. And me and you were making Dream Car. Me and you had already had this discussion. What's your favorite car? And you asked me what my favorite car is, when we get to know each other. And we then ended up doing, and I'm sorry about this, Elvis, we ended up doing a Massey or a Ferguson tractor. And I apologize for the Ferguson tractor, but it's a good part of the story, because we did this Ferguson tractor, and one of the mechanics on his way in to work said, oh, did you notice out a quarter of a mile away from where we were working at our workshop, the farmer is having a farmer's sale, and we might want to put the Fergie tractor in the sale. So I said, well, pop back down there and have a word with the farmer to see if we can enter it in. And because it was a bit late, it was viewing day. So he disappeared down there. Then he phoned me up 10 minutes later and said, I'm standing in the farmer's field and I'm looking at 4 Ferguson tractors. So he said, I don't think our one would, do well because there's already 4 here. I'm also looking at a diesel generator. I'm looking at a combine harvester. And I'm also looking at a 1964 Mini Cooper S. And I'm like, what? Say what? Hello? And me and you are a quarter of a mile away, and I'm going, and he said, don't come down here. There's hundreds of people here. They're looking at the farm equipment, but most of them are interested in the Mini Cooper S. So I got him to take 100 pictures of the car. He came back and showed us, me and you, looking through the pictures. And then it was Saturday the next day. We weren't working, but I sent him, because I knew I couldn't turn up at the auction. I sent him to the auction when I got him on the phone, and I just made him stand in the crowd with his hand up in the air until the hammer went down to me. And I bought little Frankie, and I've got my dream car. I've got it. It's bloody amazing.
Yeah, and your face when you got the confirmation that it was yours was a picture that I'll never forget. That was brilliant.
It was the same face as when my wife gave birth to my daughter, Chloe, but don't tell her that. It was just a moment of pure joy. And if you, Nick Avery is minding your cameraman, and Nick's been with me for 16 years of my life. He's the most amazing bloke. And the reason it's called Frankie is because we had Frank, our mechanic next door, who was renting our workshop off. He recommissioned it for the road for me. New brake lines, brake pads, flushed out the fuel system, made sure that it was okay for me to drive home whilst I was working with Elvis. And so in his honor, I called it Frankie, the little car. And I remember when he gave me the keys and said, I think you're safe to drive home now. We it was MOT'd anyway. It didn't need one, but we MOT'd it just to make sure and put tax on it, which was free, obviously. And then I got the keys and I said to Nick, we was driving around in that Land Rover at the time. And I said to Nick, that Discovery, I said, leave the disco. Me and you will go home in Frankie together. And it's a good 60, 70 miles. Now, this car hasn't turned a wheel for the last 20 years. And I decided to take the country roads home and roundabouts. And if you could have seen my face and Nick's face all the way home, we were we were screaming like girls at a Take That concert. We were just having, it was the time of my life. And still today, it's the most joyous experience to be behind the wheel. I love it.
Brilliant. Yeah, really, really good. It was a great moment for me. I know it wasn't even my car, but brilliant to see. So that's the dream car. Hang on.
Yours,
so
Elvis. Just as long as I can get going in a Formula One car again. You can swing it.
Well, listen, I thought we would move this towards Formula One in a moment, because you've got a couple of really good Formula One stories, which we'll come to. But before we do that, let's talk about Dream Car. So for those who don't know, Wheeler Dealers Dream Car was the show that Mike and I did together. So this was a UK spin-off of the main Wheeler Dealers franchise that we did together right here in the UK, where, well, we took a punter's car. And let's be honest, Mike, some of the cars that you brought to me into my workshop were not in the best of health. They weren't worth a fortune. And we had to somehow, with a short amount of time normally, a very small amount of money, turn that into something that was of added value to eventually be able to trade these cars up to get whatever the punter's dream car was. And it was somebody that couldn't afford it or didn't have the skills to do it themselves. So it was a really nice, rewarding process. But I mean, just give us a couple of lines on what you thought of the series compared to the main show.
Well, listen, Wheeler Dealers is a behemoth. It's an animal all by itself, and you know, it's a great show that tells you how you can have a go yourself at buying a car, fixing it up, doing it yourself, and making yourself some money, and having the confidence. We always try to give the audience the confidence to have a go. And Dream Car comes from an idea I wrote in 2004, which was called Rex to Riches. It was on ITV. And again, it's all about empowering the audience and saying, why not have a go yourself? You can try this. There's nothing to stop you trading up your old jalopy and getting yourself your own dream car. If I can do it, and if I can do it with Elvis, I know that people out there can do it. So when Dream Car came around and we decided that me and you should work together, I thought, well, Elvis, you know, I need to challenge him, right? Because this guy's used to working with laptop computers in a room that's clinically clean. You could eat your dinner off the floor. He's used to, you know, having his lunch brought into him by catering staff and probably having a massage at the end of the day with the McLaren team. And I thought I'd challenge him. So I bought in cars like the Mazda MX-5 Unos that we got from Harlan. And I bought in cars like the Fiesta that we got from Jess. And I thought, let's see how good he is. And I apologize to this day that some of the abject crap that I bought into that workshop, I never in a month of Sundays thought we would ever be able to produce the results we did. But
well,
me and you have discussed this over many a beer at length. It is the hardest thing I've ever done. I've been on the front line in Afghanistan, but this was harder. But it wasn't for us, me and you. We weren't taking the profits out of these cars. It was for the pure joy of those moments when we handed the cars over to Jess, who burst into tears, being a school teacher, to Harlan, who's a struggling kid that wants to take pictures and dreams of taking pictures in motorsport. So for that moment alone, you can't pay for that. It's just priceless. And it meant that I got this amazing working relationship with you, this fantastic bond and friendship with you. I got to introduce you to my family, which is Nick and Simon and John Sterling. And I don't regret a single moment of it. I just loved it, every single bit of it. It's one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. It was an amazing experience from my side because, of course, it was brand new for me. I'd never done anything like this really before. It was a world away from working in a Formula One garage. I mean, like you touched on some of the stuff that turned up. I mean, somebody sent a question earlier saying, what was the worst thing that Mike ever brought to you? Now, I reckon you'll know what that is before I even say anything.
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't apologise enough. Yeah, listen, at the time, you have to understand my position, okay? So at the time, I am with a film crew that costs a lot of money. I'm in the north of England. I'm miles away, and I'm on my way to go and see a horse box that looks good in the pictures, and it looks quite reasonably priced. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I know everything there is to know about buying a car. I can buy cars. I'm really good at buying cars. I've made my living buying and selling cars. I sell 7,000 cars a year at Mike Brewer Motors. I'm pretty good at car buying and selling. There's no doubt about that. Including my wife, Michelle. She's brilliant at it. But I've never bought a horse box ever in my life. So when I turn up with a crew that's being paid for and the pressure's on me to get this deal done because we need to get back, give it to you, I'm just looking at a horse box and I'm thinking, well, I want to turn it into a bar anyway, so it might need a lick of paint and it might need something. It might need a little bit of work, but it didn't look that bad. And then
you sound like my wife when she's saying, "Could you just paint that room downstairs? Because it only takes you 10 minutes."
I'm to this day. I'll never. Now you've got some brilliant faces. You are a man of many great faces. We always said that when we're putting the shows together. Elvis has got some very characterful looks, and there was one look when I visited you halfway through. So I'd handed you the horse box, told you my grand idea. Then I went away and I was busy doing something else. And you phoned me and you said, you need to come back. I need to talk to you. And I said, well, tell me over the phone. And he went, no, you need to see this yourself. And when I come around the corner, you were sitting in basically a wire frame, sitting on the wire frame with an angle grinder, grinding, and there was nothing left. And you were grinding away. The only bits that were left, you were grinding them away. And I walked around the corner and you looked up at me. And it was that look where I went, I don't think he likes me anymore. I think that's the end of this relationship. That's as far as that one went. But no, you actually swallowed it up and you turned that thing around so much so that I paid 800 quid for it. And we sold it for £6,000. So you can't say flipping fairer than that, can you?
Yeah, we did well in the end with it. And that was the thing about that show. Like you say, it was about the giving these things over in the end and building up to this moment where we handed over this car to someone that it was literally the car of their dreams. And that was what was so special for me. But it was amazing working with you again and you know, getting that relationship together. And the show was so much fun to do. Loads of people are already asking, are we doing more? When's it happening again? I guess the truth is yes, we're going to do more. That's something that everybody wants to happen. What we don't quite know yet, just because of what's going on in the world, is when that's going to happen. You've still got half a series of Wheeler Dealers in the States to finish before we can start filming this one back here in the UK.
Yeah, we have both been speaking to the network, and we both agreed and the network agree it was an incredibly popular show, and it's resonating now around the world, and it's playing on Motor Trend in the US and everywhere else, and it's smashing it wherever it plays. People absolutely love it. So obviously there's an appetite to do more series. This is something I would like to ask the audience, and maybe they can respond to you. But you know, Wheeler Dealers for me isn't, you know, Ant and Elvis. It's a brotherhood. We're a family. We're a family unit, and our ethos is all the same. We want to rescue cars. We want to better people's lives. Whenever we put a car together on Wheeler Dealers, and I sell it at the end, I feel when I'm selling it at the end, I'm making somebody's dream car. I'm making their dream come true by doing this amazing car for them and then buying it. And that's the feeling that I get when I make a dream car with you. So yes, me and you are going to be making more dream car. We don't know when, but also I would like to know the audience's reaction, because I think this would be really good. And I know I haven't spoke to you about it yet, but I think it'd be really good if you come on to Wheeler Dealers and did a couple of builds on Wheeler Dealers for us as well. I think that'd be quite entertaining. What would they think about it?
Well, interesting, yeah. Well, let us know what you think of that. I mean, I'll tell you what I think of that. I think it'd be amazing, not just for the Californian sunshine.
I think it'd be brilliant. I can buy more horse boxes. Caravans. I buy caravans and horse boxes.
Well, listen, that dream car is almost certainly coming back to your screens, and of course you'll be the first to know. And loads of people have also said, how do we get in touch? How do we become part of that show? Which is great that so many people are interested. As soon as we know when we are back up and running, we will let everybody know. So keep an eye on Mike's channels, on my channels. You'll be the first to know, I promise you. So that's definitely coming your way.
Ask us in the meantime, because
My inbox and my social media feeds and yours are just jammed up with people saying, "This is I have a Fiesta. I want a Bugatti Chiron. This is," and because I'm not responding, because I simply don't have an answer for them, they may think that I'm just cold shouldering them. I'm not. It's just that I've got an answer for you, and I can't answer everyone. So just be patient, wait, and when it happens, both me and Mark will announce it on social media together, and we'll be looking for submissions then, and there'll be an email link that you would have to submit your story to, and then there'll be a little team, including me and Elvis, go through them, and once we go through them, we'll decide which ones are worthy.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, let's quickly get some questions. I've just got to change my screen over so I can find the questions. So here we go. There's a few coming in. In fact, there's loads coming in. Lots about your favourite cars, which we've covered lots of. I'm going to bring up this one from a guy called Jan Vides, and he says, "Hi, Mike. It's awesome that you're joining this YouTube session with Mark. Thank you." He says, "The question, could you and Mark build a Formula One car with parts from previous cars from different teams and factories? And what would a wheeler dealer dream car look like?"
That is the Ibiza Formula One team, isn't it? It's an Ibiza this and a bits of that. Well, this is a great question, actually. Could you let's take one year only, and this is a joint question. If you were to take 1 year only, say 2015, so quite recently, 5 years ago, could you take parts off of every manufactured team? Could you take a rear wing, a tub, a front spoiler? Could you take uprights, wheels, seat, engine? Could you make out of different parts a Formula One car? And I would say the answer would be yes.
Well, the answer would be yes, because with Formula One we can pretty much do anything, and that's what Formula One's great at, is making stuff work. What wouldn't happen is the bits wouldn't just fit together. You would have to do modifications because, well, yeah, everybody makes their own bits for their own cars, and so nothing would fit from one onto another. They are all completely different to each other in terms of the way the fittings, the way the dimensions all work. However, what Formula One does very well is engineer solutions to problems. So it would be an amazing experiment, wouldn't it? It'd actually be a really interesting thing to try and do.
I reckon you could build, this is me personally thinking about it logically, you could possibly build the fastest 2015 car of that season, because you would say the front spoiler in the Ferrari works better than anybody else's, so we'll have that. The chassis in the McLaren was better than anybody else's, so we'll have that. The engine was better in the Red Bull, so we'll have that. And you could take the best bits of every team and put them together in one package, and you'd have an unbeatable car.
Well, if only it worked that way, it would be awesome, wouldn't it? Unfortunately,
Wheeler dealer special.
well, unfortunately, these bits don't work when they're bolted together with something else. That is the problem. That's the thing. They are designed to only work with the other bits of the car. So a front wing off one and a rear wing on the other. Although the logic says the best of each should work, in reality they may not, because maybe the airflow coming off one doesn't match up with a bit further down the car. So
yeah, I just drew that. I just sat here and drew it, and you've ruined it now.
It would be a brilliant experiment, though. I'd love to try and do it.
It would be great. It would be great. Somebody out there is going to be clever enough on their computer to do that and build it, and then send it to you.
Let me find another question. Oops, hold on. There we go. Next question comes from, sorry, I've got to do this a slightly clunky way, but this is a good one. Ed Harbour. He says, this is a bit of a funny one for me. He says, Mike's famous for holding out his hand when striking a deal. How's his tactics had to change with the onset of COVID-19?
I've done a few deals during COVID-19, and I'll tell you how they've changed. I took a pair of rubber gloves and I gave the guy a pair of rubber gloves and I shook his hand. And I was quite happy to shake somebody's hand, you know, a metre of my arm and a metre of his arm, and we shook hands in the middle, but we're both wearing rubber gloves. You know, a deal's not done until you do a deal. You have to shake somebody's hand. It's really weird after, you know, 40 years of me buying and selling cars, it's really weird of me to say to somebody, yeah, mate, go on then. It's a deal. I'll have it, without actually a physical contact with the eyes and with the hands. It's almost impossible to acknowledge that a deal took place. So I think the world's going to be different as we move on. And my little motto and saying, hold out your hand. My hold out your hands motto might be wave your fist. It might be something else in the future, but hopefully by the time we get back to making proper TV after all of this, we can hold out our hands again.
Brilliant. Loads of people loving the idea of us building a wheeler dealer racing car. Lots of team names being suggested.
What about you being on Wheeler Dealers, doing some builds in the Halo workshop, doing a complete car with me?
Oops, hang on. Sorry, I'm having to play with volumes here because if we overlap, we get a massive load of feedback. So yeah, people liking that idea. So lots of support for that, which is great for me. I'm happy about that too. Yeah, very good. So yes, lots of people loving the idea of an F1 car. And whilst we're on the subject of Formula One, I'm just going to leave that one there for a moment. While we're on Formula One, you've got some good Formula One stories. Let's quickly touch on some of those. Lots of people here watching are obviously Formula One fans from my channel. The two that I wanted to get out of you today were, first of all, the idea that you touched on it earlier. You've driven a Formula One car. Now, I haven't even done that. That's an amazing thing. I'd love to know your take on that. What was the experience like? How can you put that into words for someone who's never even come close?
Well, if you think about it, I'm no different than a man in a pub, right? So this is like talking to Dave in the pub and saying, Dave, what was it like when you drove a Formula One car? Because I should not be allowed anywhere near a Formula One car. But being I'm in a privileged position of being a car reviewer back when I was making Driven on Channel 4 and a journalist, I've become a very well-known, award-winning, by the way, motoring journalist, several awards of motoring journalism. Fortunately, I got an invite to go down to Magny-Cours, the French Grand Prix circuit, and do a review, which was filmed, so you can probably look it up somewhere online, do a review of a Formula One car. So I went down to Magny-Cours and I was greeted with, I had to do a whole day's training, first of all, in a Fiat Berlingo. That was the first thing that I did. So a training in an SUV, which was really weird. And the instructor was so cool because his job was to just put abject fear and terror into me. He was very French. And he said, so this corner here, we call this the Golf Kink. You will come around here. You will wait for the car to get straight before you apply the accelerator. If you do put the accelerator on too early, you will drive into the wall and you will lose your legs. And then we take the next corner. And he said that all the way around the circuit. So he's putting his fear into me. So I did a day in the Berlingo. And then after that, not the Berlingo, sorry, a Multipla, the ugliest thing on the planet. And then after that, the next day, they put me in a Formula 3000, which was getting into a single-seater racing car. And I can actually drive. So a lot of people don't know that I'm actually quite a good driver. You become a good driver when you spend 5 years sat next to and with Mr. Jason Plato. So I did a series with him called Driven, and I did a lot of race experiences and a lot of tuition with Jason. So I get to drive this single-seat Formula 3000. But by the time it was meant to be a whole day of that, but by the time I got to lunchtime in the morning, Stefan, who was the instructor, he said, actually, you've set the fastest time in the 3000 we've ever had for a privateer. We're all pretty confident you can definitely take on the Formula One car. So I was sort of excited for the next day, but he said, so we're going to go for it after lunch. Oh, right. Okay. So I had lunch, which I didn't have because I was terrified. And then because this terror was just built into you all the way through, you're going to crash, you're going to lose your legs, you're going to die. And then after lunch, they greeted me with, you ready for this? Michael Schumacher's Grand Prix winning Benetton.
And I'm not jealous at all.
No. So I'm like, hello? Are you sure? And they went, yeah, this is the first car you're going to drive. So I get into Benetton, and the idea was that I had to do 5 laps, come back in so they could test all the cameras, all the microphone, and all the equipment, and then I'll go out and do some more laps and talk about the car. So the very first time it had the world's smallest clutch. So the clutch pedal was a pedal in the car, but the clutch pedal was almost like Barbie's clutch pedal from a Barbie car. It was a tiny little thing, and it was off to the left. And what you did is you had the paddles on the gearbox, you pulled first gear, Stefan would turn his finger to say more revs. So rev, 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 and the faster he'd spin his finger, you have to give it revs. And then he would move his hand up like this to say, let the clutch out. And the clutch only had it was only about an inch worth of travel. So it was either on or off. So I remember being terrified that I was definitely going to stall this car. And I didn't want to stall it in front of the cameras. But I revved it highly, did exactly what you said, let the clutch out, and it went, off it goes. And as soon as you're away, you never touch the clutch again. It's just, computers take over, you're on the paddle box. So I drove out the pit lane. I drove down it's called the Golf Kink to the Adelaide hairpin. And I drove down there the first time. The first time I hit the brakes, I remember thinking to myself, what just happened? I couldn't work that one out. That was a bit of a weird one. And then I did my first lap. And as I came back past the start-finish straight, remember, I've been in the car for a lap, getting off the start line. I'm a TV presenter. It's my job to bring you this experience. As I came back past the pit lane for the first time, I noticed the cameraman hanging over the barrier. That's when I remembered I should be saying something. And I went, I should be talking. I'd forgotten to talk because I was just concentrating so much. And then for the next 4 laps, the only word I said, or 2 words, one of them was F, and the second word was brakes. Because I can only say I've been fast, 0 to 60 going fast. Most people have experienced that. I've driven Ferraris, Porsche, I've driven everything fast. But there is nothing that you can comprehend about the brakes on an F1 car of that generation. When I was doing 200 miles an hour down the Golf Kink coming to the Adelaide hairpin, they put cones out for me, braking point. And because they were ceramic, there's 2 braking maneuvers. You press hard on the brake pedal, come off, and then go back on again. So you have to get heat into the disc and the pad as quickly as you possibly can. Come off and go back on, but it's only a little come off and go back on. So it's a bit like cadence braking, but you learn it instantly. You have to learn it very quickly. And I remember coming down the Golf Kink, I'm looking down at the speedo, I'm shouting at the camera, 198, 199, 200 miles an hour. And the cones went past me. And I went, poof, hit the brakes, come off, hit the brakes again. And by the time I'd looked up, because you're just forced with the G-force down in your seat. By the time I'd looked up, the corner was still 30 meters away. So I had to downshift through the gearbox and drive to the corner with a French marshal standing on the corner going like that. And I just thought, what an idiot. What an absolute idiot. But the car actually, I did in that car, 16 laps in that car. Then it broke down, but it broke down with not me in it. I pulled it back into the garage. They took me out. They did a radio check and everything else. And then in the garage, something went wrong with it whilst they were doing a bit of maintenance. So I spent the rest of the day in Damon Hill's Danker Arrows. So in total, I did 24 laps, half a Grand Prix in Formula One cars at Magny-Cours on the F1 circuit. And it was just mind-blowing. It was just like the best thing ever.
What an amazing experience. Amazing experience. And you just said there about the brakes. Exactly the same thing happened to me. I've never been in a Formula One car on a racetrack yet, but I have been in the team simulator at McLaren, which was an amazing experience for me anyway. But exactly the same thing happens. Bowling down towards a corner, get to your braking point where in your mind where everything says you should hit the brakes. And then you think, well, I'm in an F1 car, so I'll leave it a little bit longer. You hit the brakes and it just stops. And then you have to get back on the power to drive to the corner. I had exactly the same embarrassing experience.
I remember just looking up, seeing the corner when I drove, and it's a real hairpin.
the Adelaide hairpin is a proper hairpin. And I drove to the corner, and on the inside of that corner was a French marshal with his flat cap on, a gould wire hanging out of his mouth. And he gave me that as I drove around, as if to say he's absolutely. There was another bit to that day. So when I came in after my 24th lap, Stefan said, you drove amazingly. You drove really, really well. And he said, you set the fastest privateer time we've ever had in one of these cars. So well done. He said, you've set an amazing time. And my time, I can't remember exactly the times, but I think my time, say it was 1:57, which was a pretty good time, right? So he said, yeah, 1:57 is a really good time. So I'm sort of celebrating with the film crew and standing out in front of the paddock, giving it the large one. And, you know, I'm walking on cloud 10, not cloud 9, cloud 10. I was feeling amazing. And this little French mechanic came up to me and went, well driven today, well driven. I said, thank you very much. He went, have you seen the fastest lap time here? And I said, no. He said, it's your friend, your countryman, Nigel Mansell. He said, it's in the Cannons Williams. And I went, all right. And he went, you should go and look at it. It's on the wall down there by the control tower. I said, all right, what is it? I'm 1:57. And he went, yeah, no, his was 1:27. And I went, oh, right. So I'm thinking in my head, well, it's only 30 seconds. I'm 30 seconds slower than Nigel Mansell. And then he said to me these words. He said, so let me tell you, when you're at the back end of the circuit at the Hockenheim complex, at the back of the circuit, he's already crossing the start-finishing line. And when he said that to me, I was like, there's no way somebody could be that fast. But that's how fast those 3-litre turbo ridiculous things were back in the day. So it's absolutely, what an experience. I want to go
amazing.
back.
I mean, it's just, I am utterly jealous of all of that. I mean, you never know. Maybe one day I'll get a chance, but that sounds incredible.
Any Formula One teams out there got an old car, they want him to drive, he's more than happy to put it on his YouTube channel.
Well, the other thing that I wanted to just get you, because we'll probably give it another 10 minutes or so. We've been going for nearly 45 minutes already, so we'll give it another 10 minutes. But
got a drink, I'm quite settled in.
But the other thing I wanted to get, because you've told me this before, and I thought it was a really nice insight, was your insight into the great Michael Schumacher, because you've met him on a number of occasions, and obviously for me he was a real rival in the early part of my career. He was the arch enemy for a lot of the time when we were with Mika Häkkinen in the beginning, then even with Kimi Räikkönen in the early part of Kimi's career with us. Michael was our biggest rival at Ferrari. But you've got a really nice insight, I thought, about the times you've met him more than once you've met him, and I think you said some nice things about how he remembered you years later, and I thought that was a nice little story we could share.
Yeah, so I've met lots of F1 drivers. I've met lots of very professional people, but I genuinely feel that Michael Schumacher, the reason why he was such a success is I genuinely think he had a photographic memory, but yeah, I'm sure he had somebody in his ear. I'm convinced he did. Because the first time I got to meet him was down at Fiorano. I was doing some work for a company. The first time I met him at Fiorano, I was actually on Channel 4 making Driven with James May and Jason Barlow. So a very, very long time ago. And I got to meet him down there. He was a star, but he wasn't. It was like meeting, say, today, Charles Leclerc. You know, he wasn't a multi-champion back then. He was just like he'd won one championship, I think. And it was great to meet him, and we had a chat, and he asked my name, he asked the crew's name, and he was lovely. And then the second time I got to meet him was probably 2 years later. Now he'd won 2 more championships. And when I got to meet him the second time, I remember we turned up at the circuit. I was filming at Fiorano on the circuit. And when we got there, we weren't allowed to go anywhere on the circuit because he was out there testing the Formula One car. And he should have been off the circuit at 3:00. But it was 5:00 in the evening, and he was still pounding the car around. And the mechanics and the PR are saying to me, we just can't get him to come in. You know, he comes in, screams for new tyres, fuel, and he's off again. So we just can't do anything. But when he finally got out of the car just after 5, it was boiling hot. It was so hot. It was unbearable. He gets out the car. He looks at me, acknowledges me and the crew, and then he disappeared. And we now have got the circuit, but we've only got it for like 2 hours, 7 o'clock until they're going to shut down. So we compromised our time. But he disappeared. Then he turned up again about 25 minutes later with a crisp white shirt on, holding a cardboard box full of Solero ice lollies. And he said, sorry, guys, I'm really sorry. I know it's hot and I held you up. And he gave us all these ice lollies. And he said, I'm really sorry, Mike. And I went, right. Nice that you remember my name. And he went, yeah, I remember. And he said, you still with Rob, the cameraman? And I went, yeah. And he went, nice to see you, Rob, and da-da-da. Anyway, we all thought that was a bit weird. And then it was a couple of years after that, I get to meet him again. This is, again, back in, this was in Modena. This was another thing that I was doing, a PR for Ferrari. It was after that AGM meeting, and I was doing some work for him. And he said to me, he come up to me, and he said, so, Mike, how you doing? I said, I'm all right. And he went, you still with Rob and Nelly? And I'm like, he must have somebody in his ear. There must be somebody in his ear. He can't remember. He must meet millions of people, millions. And then the last time was at the Geneva Motor Show. I was on the Ferrari stand talking to the PR officer, Jason Harris, and we were talking over somebody sat on a chair, and he heard my voice, and he stood up, turned around, and he went, Mike, how are you? And I said, Mike, how are you? And all these cameras came in from everywhere, from every angle, and sort of separated us. And he said, he held out his hand. He was sort of almost holding my hand because we were being pushed apart. And he said, just keep in touch, keep in touch. At which point my phone rang, and Michelle, my wife, was on the phone, and she said, you're talking to Michael Schumacher. And I said, how do you know? She said, you're live on BBC News. That was the film crews coming in from the Geneva Motor Show. So, yeah, quite incredibly, he remembered my name every time I met him and the crew. And then I found out when he had his accident, I did a little benefit thing. Well, in fact, I host a charity day for Ferrari at Silverstone for the Rainbow Trust. So I host this charity day, and it's a lovely thing to do. And when you're doing the charity day, you give your time up, and Nick Mason, the drummer from Pink Floyd, me, and lots of touring car drivers come down, and I host the day. And you get a lot of marshals also give up their time, and they come down to host the circuit so we can take these terminally ill kids out in Ferraris and give them a thrill ride. And when I was hosting these events, I get to talk to the marshals. They all want me to sign their overalls. They all want to talk to me or have a picture or a selfie. And I noticed that almost by default, every single marshal has a Michael Schumacher signature on their overalls. Every one of them. On their orange coveralls, they've all got Michael Schumacher. And so by the 20th time I've signed a coverall, I say to them, you've all got Michael Schumacher. And I've got them all corralled around, listening to me. And I said, you've all got... And they said, do you know why? Because after every Grand Prix race, when everyone goes home and everyone disappears, he walks around the circuit to every marshal position, every single Grand Prix, and this will be every Grand Prix around the world. And he talks to the marshals, and he says to them, what was my line like around this corner? Was I on the apex, left of the apex? What was my line like? And signs their overalls, has a chat with them, walks on to the next marshal post, talks to him and says, where was my breaking point when I come down here? Was it there? And that's why the guy was 7 times world Formula One champion, because he walks around the circuit after signing overalls, talking to people and asking them questions that I'm pretty sure the current Grand Prix drivers don't do that. They go to their motorhomes and go home. Simple as that. Count their money.
And that was exactly why I wanted you to tell that story, because it shows this other side of Michael Schumacher that I knew about, because I'd seen that side myself. I've been out with him in the evenings at times. Even though he's a fierce competitor, he has this reputation as this brutal race car driver that will go to any lengths to win. Doesn't come across as a real personable character, but he really is. And that story was a real example of that.
Yeah, no, amazing. And I remember taking my daughter Chloe to her first ever Formula One race at Silverstone, her first ever race, and it was at Silverstone. And I was there as a guest of Ferrari at that time. And I remember walking up to Stowe Corner. I remember walking up, and we're looking away from the corner, so the cars are going to come round and past us and away. Although we had grandstand seats, I wanted to see the circuit. And the very first car she ever see was Michael Schumacher come through that corner. And if you've not experienced it as a member of the audience, it feels like you're witnessing a car crash. It's the only way to describe it. It looks just otherworldly. This thing can't be moving that fast, going through that complex of corners and still not crashing. It doesn't compute. Your brain can't. TV does nothing for real Formula One. And I remember standing there with my daughter as Michael Schumacher, and I went, here he comes, Chloe, here's Michael Schumacher. And I've met the guy before, by now. And as he come past, Chloe gripped my hand so tightly that she went, "Ah!" She screamed with excitement. And I thought, Jesus Christ, that's what it meant. Every person there wanted to do that. But she was a kid, so she did it. But that was just an amazing experience. And I love the guy. I thought he was that's what makes you don't become multiple world champion unless you have that absolutely killer attitude. And yes, the guy obviously had cheated at some point, banging Damien Hill off, and the same with Jacques Villeneuve. He bumped him off, but that is that mindset. It's win or it's either burn or crash, or it's win or crash. It's that mindset. But away from the circuit, amazing guy, super guy.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Right, listen, we've got, let's finish at the top of the hour, so 10 minutes. I'm going to get a couple of questions. Hang on. I turned you off there. Go on, say what you're going to say.
I wasn't going to say anything. I was going to say I'm loving this.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I'm loving it too. Lots of people are as well, because I've got some good questions to finish off with. So I've just got to mute you while I find the questions. I know it's a bit weird, but that's what I've got to do. Hold on, I'll stand by. Right, let's have a couple of questions here. First of all, I've missed his name. Oh, here we go. His name, Dean B says, his quick one says, what is Mike drinking?
Oh, well, I'm drinking very nicely. I'm sort of having a little celebratory day today, which is nice because I want to bought my first electric car today, of which we're not spoken about. So we could, but I'm sort of celebrating my little purchase today, and I'm drinking. And feel free to, if they're out there and want to sponsor me, I'm quite happy for a sponsorship, or people can just send me bottles because I really like it. Woodford Reserve, which is a nice whiskey.
Blatant.
It's a legendary drink. It's delicious.
Shameless plug, I love it. Yeah, we didn't get to talk about your car. I really wanted to, but we are going to run out of time. Mike's been to test today the brand new electric Porsche. Are we going to see some kind of review anywhere, Mike? Are you doing it? Is this just for personal use, or are you going to review it?
No, it's personal use. So I bought myself as you know, me and you are going to be working together. I have to drive a certain amount of miles every day. Usually it's a 2-hour journey for me to get to work. I love driving old cars. But, in this day and age, I need to think about my carbon footprint is awful. It is terrible. And you know what? I just wanted something that after a long, hard day, and they usually are very long, sometimes 17-hour days, I wanted something that I can be excited by, but be absolutely peaceful, comfortable, listen to my music, listen to a podcast, listen to you on the way back. And I thought, go and buy yourself a nice, decent electric car. So I bought a Porsche Taycan.
What an amazing car that is. You've already told me your first impressions, which sound spectacular.
It was just, and again, it was almost the first time I put my foot down in it. It was almost the same as that Michael Schumacher's Benetton. It was a different. It's a kind of otherworldly experience. It's the future now, and you just can't get your head round how good it is. It's so good. It's unbelievable. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with myself. I'm delighted.
How long before we get an electric car on wheeler dealers?
We've had one. Me and Ed, we did a Maserati bi-turbo that we electrified with Tesla motors, and it went like out of it. It was the Maserati bi-turbo. The worst thing about that car was the engine. So we dumped the engine and we put in electric motors, 2 of them, because it was bi-turbo. So we put 2 motors in, and we turned it into a car that had better range,
250-mile range, where the Maserati on a tank could do 240 miles. 0 to 60 was about 4.5 seconds. I think the Maserati was 8 seconds. And top speed, 140 miles an hour, and the Maserati was 130 miles an hour. So he took old technology and just made it better. It's brilliant.
Love it. Love it. Okay, another question. Let me just find it, because this is one that I saw. Oh, Josh Smith says, how do you like your eggs? Let's get that one in quick.
Nice. I like them fried. I like them poached, but you can't beat a fried egg, especially if you're having it on a steak or a pizza.
Very good. Okay. And then this one that I saw come in earlier, bear with me. Let me see who it was. Here we go. Let me get rid of that one. Rob Booth says, oh, hang on, I've messed it up. There we go. Rob Booth says, ask him why he seems to have a thing about buying cars, vans and caravans that need a really good clean. Does he enjoy seeing you in marigolds? And that, of course, refers to...
Yes, I have a little fetish about seeing you in those bright yellow gloves. Maybe I missed the orange gloves. That's what it is. I like seeing you in the bright yellow gloves, cleaning away the inside of caravans and motorhomes. No, the truth is, if you buy something that's got a lot of cloth inside it, like a caravan or a motorhome, inevitably they need a lot more cleaning than the car. So you end up sticking Marc in marigolds and getting him cleaning the inside out.
Well, I put that question in because it leads very nicely on to this little funny clip that you may not have seen, because this never made the show. It was something that we filmed behind the scenes just on a mobile phone. But we were cleaning in the show, I was cleaning with my marigolds on this caravan. It's like an Airstream type caravan. And once the cameras had cut, we filmed this funny little clip, which I'll show you now. Yeah, so it's got fridge, freezer in here. It's got everything, barometer, air conditioning that works as well. Microwave, telly, all the mod cons, double beds down here, full bathroom as well, including a bath. Full, yeah, bath around the corner, shower, the whole lot.
That's called Mark 1.
That's nice, that. Yeah, nice. Cupboards for all your storage, sink as well, of course, oven. It literally has everything. What do you reckon?
22.
Deal. Thanks very much.
How much you
We sold it. We sold it.
I'm going to buy that Escort Mark 1.
Do it. And that was something that we put together. I think I put it on social media, so you may have seen it. But that, I think, sums up some of the laughs that we had on that show. That was literally Mike with his trousers round his ankle.
I said to you from day one, I said, if me and you don't laugh to the point of tears every day, let's not do it. Let's go home. Because that's I love what I do. We can't take it too seriously. It's fun, it's entertainment, and I just want to enjoy every day I go to work.
I think we definitely did that. We laughed all the way through. I've never laughed so much as I did on that show. It was a lot of fun. We'll wrap things up, but I know before we go, you want to tee up something coming up over on your channels tomorrow that you guys at home, because you're all motorsport fans, may well enjoy as well. So who's on your Wheeler Dealers or Mike Brewer Live tomorrow evening, Mike?
Yeah, so over on my Facebook page, which is Mr. Wheeler Dealer, or just type in Wheeler Dealer and it'll be the top one. Every Thursday night, 8 o'clock, I do the Mike Brewer live show. I bring in guests. I've had you on, which was fantastic. And last week, Frank Stephenson, which was just amazing having Frank on. We spoke for an hour and a half. It was so good. But tomorrow, I've got the most successful, most winningest tin top driver in motorsport history. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jason Plato is coming on. So Jason is a brilliant character. He's also a demon presenter on Fifth Gear. We worked together on Driven many years ago. We've got some stories we can tell you. There's plenty of stories we can't tell you, but no doubt we'll allude to them, and they'd be very funny. But meet a motoring legend tomorrow, Mr. Jason Plato, 8 p.m. over on the Wheeler Dealer Facebook page. It's going to be great.
Yeah, highly recommend that. So put that in your diaries, and you can go and catch up on all the others, including the one that Mike and I did together, because they're all still there. So well worth checking out. For now then, Mike, it's been an hour, so I think we better let people go, although I could chat all night long, and I know you can as well. But I just want to say, A huge, huge thank you for coming onto the channel. Everybody at home is saying thank you in the comments. They've all really enjoyed it. So really appreciate your time tonight, Mike.
Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure and honour. Let's make it a regular thing. And I can't wait to see you again. Elvis, big hugs. And let's get back to making people's dreams come true.
Can't wait, mate. All right, well, thank you very much. And we will see you all very, very soon. I'll be back on the channel maybe tomorrow, definitely on Friday, with another Tales from the Treehouse, as long as it hasn't blown down in the storms, which, by the way, I slept in last night. You may have seen on my Instagram today. But I'll be back very soon. Mike, I'm sure we'll be back on this channel before long as well. So, Mike, thanks very much. Folks, see you later.